Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Today we will present you about biogeography. Before we start, let me introduce our member. First is Dena Aisyah with student number 138, Rinta Sofia with student number 145, and Nadya Noora with student number 163. First is introduction. Biogeography is the study of the geographic distribution of living things and the abiotic factors that affect their distribution. Abiotic factors, such as temperature and rainfall, vary based mainly on latitude and elevation. As these abiotic factors change, the composition of plant and animal communities also change. Ecologists who study biogeography examine patterns of species distribution. Species distribution patterns are based on biotic and abiotic factors and their influences during the very long periods of time required for species evolution. Habitat linkage. Habitat homogeneity facilitates population distribution in the landscape. However, habitats are often heterogeneous on land and unsuitable areas can disrupt a population distribution. For example, eggs. Speciosa movements usually cover a longer distance, whereas eggs. Phenica movements are characterized by a shorter distance and are limited in the corridor. However, eggs, Phenica can radiate a greater distance over the entire matrix. Haddad, pine, pinus, it was noted that the corridor between forest, buckwheat, Junonia coenea, and variegate fritil, Europtoita claudia, the open habitat patch buried by butterflies increased significantly.
The next is anthropogenic effect on social dynamics. Species adapted to relative unstable habitat usually have a higher reproductive capacity and greater dispersal capacity than species adapted to more stable habitats. Therefore, human-dominant ecosystems tend to support the growth of population of species adapted to disrupt habitat to the detriment of species adapted to more stable habitat. Williams and Lidbold found that some climate change scenarios predict a large area of defoliation by gypsy moths, while other scenarios predict small area of defoliation. The area distribution of spot and edge occur between adjacent points have changed due to habitat fragmentation. Next. Anthropogenic effect on spatial dynamic have an impact on the first is fragmentation. Such species are generally less adapted to rapid or long-range dispersal and may be less capable of recolonizing new or empty habitat in unholy landscape than ruthless species adapted to long-range colonization in disturbed habitat. The number 2 is disturbance to aquatic ecosystem. Changing river condition remove habitat for some species and increase habitat availability for other species. Frank argues that the disturbance and anthropogenic modification of the downstream area also influence the condition of the upstream organism. The degraded areas downstream may be more susceptible to the formation of exotic species that are tolerant of river degradation. The species then invade upstream habitats. The number 3 is anthropogenic transport across barriers. The movement of humans from alien species by passing natural barriers to spread them has significantly altered the structure and function of natural ecosystem. Urban areas are characteristic by wide variety of exotic species, especially ornamental plants and insects, and associated exotic pathogen. The road network connecting city center and infiltrating natural ecosystem is a unique ecosystem that can disrupt the movement of residents or provide corridor to facilitate the transmission of orchid from native or exotic species. Next.
Okay, the next one, model of spatial dynamics. The earliest attempts to model spatial dynamics either use diffusion models to describe the spread of insects and population distributions from population centers, or to independently model population dynamics between landscape points based on local condition within each point and point associated with the dispersal process. The second method, which takes up less storage space, is the vector method, in which only data representing polygon nodes containing data should be stored. Several matrices representing the different layers of the map can be overlaid to analyze interactions. GSS technique is a way of interpolating the most likely population's density between sampling point to improve the representations of the spatial distributions of the landscape. The spatial autocorrelations can be used to interpolate values for a site without sampling using a weighted linear average of the available samples, a technique known as kringing. Kringing represents an advance of traditional interpolations methods in several ways. General stable dependence of population's density and factors such as climate, soil conditions, vegetation, etc. can be integrated to provide a more accurate estimate than is possible for a single variable. And the next. Okay, in a nutshell, for the conclusions, on a more local scale, the spatial distribution of the population changes with the size of the populations. A growing population spreads out over a larger area as individuals move for high-density patches to the fringes of the populations. The declining population has shrunk to become isolated shelters that maintain dementia with a distinct metapopulations. The first model represents population expansions as a symbol of diffusion process. The application of GIS techniques to the dynamics of metapopulations plots allow the integrations of data on population dynamics with data on the other factors that vary spatially across the landscape. Okay, that's all from us. Thank you.